and we're in the process of recording all of our episodes right now. Then we're going to put them out, and we do Zoom, but we're just going to do audio. That's when we launch our
Audio
show.
is good.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're live. Let me make sure. I'm pretty sure we are.
Yeah, we are, I think.
Are we?
Yeah, it says live.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, we're live. All right, folks. Thrilled to have Mr. Todd Thorpe join us from MDU Consulting. I was very fortunate recently to have listened to him on another podcast. And I just felt that his knowledge and his experience would help a lot of operators, a lot of multifamily, maybe mobile home parks, operators. He brings a completely different perspective on helping the existing operators with their net operating income. But first, I want to just introduce my partner in crime, Haley. Just tell people what you're up to and what's going on in Dallas.
All right. So my name is Haley Howard. I am a syndicator in Dallas-Fort Worth. I also run a wholesale business, Lush Property Solutions, and I'm getting into the apartment industry as well.
Perfect. And did you want to introduce Todd as well?
Okay, so this is our guest, Todd Thorpe. He's the vice president of MDU Consulting Group. He specializes in helping multifamily portfolio owners and operators with adding revenue to their complexes with various value add plays. And then he's been in the industry for 20 plus years. So Todd, can you tell us a little bit about, what or how did you get into, specializing in consulting multifamily and, increasing the revenue in NOI?
Yeah, I can. First, I just want to thank you guys both for having me on the show. It's quite an honor, and looking forward to hopefully sharing some insight with your listeners and giving them some takeaways and a few nuggets. But I am a cable veteran, been in cable starting in about 1989. So I'm kind of dating myself. So going back about 30 years, and worked primarily for large cable companies on the sales side, held several senior executive positions, primarily negotiating right of entry and bulk agreements for property owners, for multifamily property owners, mobile home communities, traditional student. And, just kind of got tired of the corporate world. I'm getting old and the corporate grind, and want to relax a little bit and work on my anxiety, I think. So I joined up with a couple of partners out of Florida, and we have MDU Consulting Group. And that's what we do, is we represent the property owners in this sector who really lack the time and the knowledge to do what we do. They would rather either outsource it, hand it off to somebody else. They don't have the skill set or the knowledge to do it, and they don't really have the time to even learn. But they know multifamily, and they know their investment, they know their portfolio, keeping renters and growing their business. So they outsource it to us. Right. So we jumped in, and it's crazy.
Are you seeing a lot of renewed? I'm sure a lot of interest in the services that you provide, because I know, like you said, Todd, a lot of people that are syndicators, especially the ones that have just come out of the guru programs, they know how to maybe source a deal. They know how to find a deal, put some people together. But there's all these nuances that you take care of that's not their forte. That's not their thing. So what are you seeing in the market right now?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question, Bobby. So, and this has really been kind of at the forefront, even when I was on the other side with the cable providers, is people don't know what they don't know. And I'm sure even in the investing world, there's a lack of that knowledge. And if you don't know what you should be looking for example, if you don't realize, well, I could be getting door fees and upfront payments, and we can talk about what that is. But if you don't know, then you're really hurting yourself. Or if you don't know that, okay, I have an agreement, but it might have a year or two left on the agreement. If you don't know that, you could be starting with the cable company a month or two early before that expiration instead of waiting. So there's all these little nuances. So a lot of it, I think, is just education. And I'm pretty active on social media, just kind of putting out tips. That's what I'm seeing primarily. There's really two groups. There are the very sophisticated owner, REIT, large portfolio who have the resources internally. They've been doing this. They attend a lot of the big conferences. There's a broadband summit that's in Dallas every year. I don't know if you guys have ever attended that, where a lot of multifamily owners come in and we talk about technology. And they're very sophisticated and they know how this is done. And they have assembled the team and they have the resources dedicated to keeping their telecom agreements in check and making sure that they're getting compensation from the providers. And then there's the flip side who have really no clue. They don't understand the process. They don't understand the law. They don't know what they can and can't do. And unfortunately, they get taken advantage of. So, and probably just like with the investor, there's the sophisticated and then there's the person who's just getting into it. Yeah. So that's really what I'm seeing a lot.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And Todd, what kind of services, I know in your last podcast, I know people they don't have as many landlines anymore. So right. The landscape's changing. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that are new? You know, obviously cable and internet so important, right? But what about other services that you're seeing on the horizon that people are incorporating into their multifamily or mobile home parks?
I would say primarily it is managed Wi-Fi. That has been around for several years, but it really is starting to take off. And again, I think there was an education piece there that we're still trying to educate the owner. There's a lot of owners who are jumping into it and they're making sure that they are putting that in their property, especially your A-class, B-class properties. They want that amenity. But even in mobile home communities, there are a lot of providers out there who will put in a managed Wi-Fi. Campgrounds, marinas, it's the same thing. And a lot of people don't know that even campgrounds and marinas, RV parks are really by most providers' standards, they're considered multifamily, even though they're not your traditional multifamily when you think about it. And you drive into an RV park, you want to have Wi-Fi, right? So negotiating those agreements in those types of properties, we're seeing a lot of, and owners needing some help. And how to deploy those, because again, that's very confusing and people need help. They need that support. And then streaming service, we're starting to see a big play there. People are getting rid of, their cord cutting and they're getting rid of their traditional cable. So the providers, if they're not going to be flexible and change with the times and develop those technologies, they're going to get left behind. But we're seeing a lot of property owners who really, they want to go with bulk internet or managed Wi-Fi, and they'll leave the video up to the tenant and let them get their Netflix, their Hulu, their Sling, kind of do their own thing. Because that that landscape is changing so much.
Very nice. A quick question, Todd. What about hotels?
I'm sorry.
What about hotels?
Yeah, we can help negotiate those agreements. Typically, though, you're not going to have a right of entry agreement in a hotel or a hospitality environment like you would have in a traditional apartment or MDU. But yeah, hotels, hospitality, bulk video, bulk internet is still a really big draw. We're actually seeing, ironically, it's probably unfortunate though, is we're seeing a lot of hotels getting converted over into apartments. And I think a lot of it had to do with this past year. We're seeing that, but most of our clients and we assist in the traditional apartment or multifamily space, but we can still help hospitality and your hotel motel, because that also kind of fits in with your resort kind of campground, RV park, marina type asset.
Haley, I know you had a question.
Yeah, I do. You were saying in the beginning about like door fees. Can you kind of explain a little more about how an owner would go and actually make, extra revenue by bringing you in?
Yeah, the money, right? That's the important part. Everybody wants to know how to generate revenue, and that really is kind of at the heart of this whole dialogue and this discussion. When I got into really the multifamily part, probably 15 plus years ago, it was relatively new, where owners didn't realize, so you mean I can get money for allowing the cable company to, and I hate to keep saying cable company, but I use that more as a generic, term for provider. I can get money to allow the cable provider to come and serve, what's the catch here, right? So they always were a little bit suspicious. And it's true. So there's really 4 main ways that an owner or management company, for that matter, who represents an owner can generate revenue and make money and ultimately increase the NOI of their property. So the first is door fees, which are upfront payments made by the provider to the owner. And those are, a single check per property, and the owner typically would see that, 30 to 90 days after the contract is executed. The provider sends them what's called a door fee check, and that is a fee per unit. Typically, can be anywhere from $25 to $50 on up to, we've negotiated them as high as $400 a unit. Wow. So you can see, an owner with a large portfolio could generate over $1 million just in upfront payments.
That's huge.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. And I mean that. I've seen door fee checks like that for somebody who has 1,000 units, 1,500 units, 2,000 units, $100 a door, $200 a door, $300 a door. Yeah.
Does that kind of go by class, or is that just like generic?
It typically, Haley, it goes by class. Properties where the penetration is very, very low. And when I say penetration for your listeners, that would be the provider's number of customers they have on a property. So if you take 100 unit property, for example, or 50, or, just use an example, and say they only have 10 or 20 customers and 100 unit property, that's not as valuable to the cable company as one where there's 75 customers, right? So a B, C class is going to probably be a little bit more lucrative, but I'll do deals for clients in pretty much all classes, and we're seeing $200+ a door. So again, it's very lucrative, but the thing is, it goes back to education. If the owner doesn't realize that they should even be asking for this, number one, or they allow the provider to say, yeah, well, I'll give you, a really low door fee number. Okay, that's fine. Come on into my property, when they could have received, 5 times that. So it's important to ask. It's like buying an investment property. It's all about negotiating and getting the best deal possible.
Sure.
Yeah, so those upfront payments and the door fees, that would be number one. And those, again, they're just a one-time payment that the owner is going to get. And they keep that income, that payment. If they sell the property, and we can talk about what happens after a sale, but if they sell the property, they're not legally obligated to give the new owner a portion of that door fee. They can if they want to, but they're not legally obligated to. They can keep all of it. Okay. So the second way would be revenue share. And it's not as lucrative, but it's still a cash payment. Those are quarterly, typically, payments that are for the duration of the contract. And that's based on a percentage of the provider's gross revenue per product. So I'll just, make up a number. Say they'll give you, 5% of the gross revenue on video and internet and phone. So typical MDU property might have 50 to 60% video customers. Your internet might be higher, typically is 70, 80%. And then your landline phone is way, way down because a lot of people really aren't using that anymore. So the provider will pay the owner a quarterly, monthly recurring check for that revenue. Again, if you don't know that you should be asking for that, or what percentage, you should be able to get at least 5 to 8%. And maybe negotiating that. That's really critical. The third, which is not really a direct cash payment, but it is in an indirect way, is courtesy or complimentary services, they're called. And that's typically where the provider will give the owner one video, maybe one internet, or a combination of free complimentary service to use at their property. So for their common area, or maybe a leasing agent who resides at the property, giving them free cable, free internet.
Yep, makes sense.
But that's a value.
Yeah, absolutely. What about things like billboards, cell towers, valet services? Are you getting into any of those spaces?
We are slowly. We have been doing cell tower for a while. We're just not seeing as much of that anymore because technology is changing so much that I'm not saying it's dying, and it's still very, very viable, and there's still a lot of providers out there. But not so much on the valet. That is very popular though. My daughter, we were helping her look for an apartment locally, and there was a few of the places that she looked at that offer the concierge or the valet waste. We can help a property evaluate all of their telecom, utility, waste haul agreements. Our specialty just happens to be on the telecom side. But yeah, I mean, as far as the contract goes, a lot of the language in a telecom contract, while there will obviously be language that doesn't apply in a waste agreement, there's still a lot of language that does, like severability and assignment, indemnification, and there's a lot of legal jargon that would be in both contracts that we can help. Got to kind of watch for those pitfalls.
Got it.
How long is your typical service contract for, let's say, internet or cable? Is it like a set time, or is it something that changes with the owners?
So typically on just like a right of entry. So there's essentially two types of agreements, or well, there's really only one main agreement, and that would be your right of entry. Those are called ROE, or right of entry agreements. Some providers call them access agreements, or right to serve agreement. And that's the main document or main contract that governs the relationship between the provider and the owner, what both parties agree to. And generally in that agreement, it will stipulate that the provider has exclusive use of the inside wiring. They don't own it. There's a lot of confusion there. A lot of property owners even think, well, yeah, the cable company, they've been here forever, since 1978, 1982. Yeah, they own the wiring. Well, maybe they put it in a long time ago, who knows? But it really is a fixture of the property. It's really an asset of the property. The property owner owns it. You don't want to give up right of that. Now, you can give up the exclusive use of that to a provider. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's perfectly acceptable. And really, you want them to have exclusive use of it, because if you have what's called a home run going from the outside of the apartment all the way up to the unit, you really can only have one provider using that home run at any given time. You can't have AT&T and Comcast sharing that coax drop. It's impossible, right? Or even a satellite for that matter. So for those right of entry agreements where you're granting the provider access in exchange for door fees, revenue share, courtesy service, then you're looking at typically 8 to 10 years. And that's very common with an auto renewal built into it. And then on bulk video and internet and managed Wi-Fi, those terms are typically 5. It's 7, and especially with managed Wi-Fi, it depends on the provider needing to get a return on their investment. So they're going to put together a bill of materials and a design to bring in the infrastructure into the property. And let's just say it costs $300,000, just making up a number. And they're going to offer a managed Wi-Fi for $40 a unit for 300 by 300 symmetrical speed. But they're not going to charge the owner an install fee. So there's no equipment for the owner to buy. But since the provider is taking care of that $300,000 cost, or that construction cost, they need to get a return on their investment. So they may say, well, we need at least a 7-year term to make our money back. The owner may say, well, how about if I contribute to that $300,000? What if I give you $100,000? Then they can do what's called buying down the rate and even buying down the term. Yep. And that's part of negotiating. Yep. And trying to get a deal that both parties are comfortable with. Sure. And willing to take that risk. Sure. Makes sense. And that's the fourth way to make money, by the way, is through bulk services. Because what happens is the provider will sell services in bulk, just like the term says. It's like going to Costco or Sam's Club and buying paper towels in bulk, or toilet paper like we were doing there for a while. And then, but at a reduced cost. So, the average cable bill today is about $200 a month. And if you as an owner can buy the same service from a provider for, say, $50, $60, $70 a month per unit, right, but then turn around and you charge an amenity fee. So you charge $10, $20, $30 on top of it. The resident is still way below what they would be paying. And then that's how the owner can generate ancillary revenue.
Makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. Wow.
The-
Is there whenever you're, I guess, whenever you first buy one as an owner, is there one that you suggest? Of course, the door fee in the beginning, but is there one other than that that you suggest that they start off with?
Excuse me. I would definitely, excuse me, I would definitely recommend that the owner, at a minimum, pursue a right of entry agreement with compensation, with the first three, with your door fee, your revenue share, and a comp account of some kind, a courtesy account. And then if they want to go bulk, that really comes down to, Haley, based on an owner's business model or preference. And you see it a lot in the property type. So senior housing, bulk is very, very popular. Student housing, it's very popular. You do see it a lot in like your RV park campground type environment, obviously hotel, the hospitality. We saw it a lot when I was with Charter in mobile home communities. It was very, very popular. So it really just depends on, I'd let the owner decide what direction they want to do, but at a minimum, you want that right of entry agreement, which literally is giving the provider an easement. And I know that word is scary to a lot of people, but you're literally giving, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're giving the provider an easement to be on the property.
Yep. Todd, since you do have, you work with a lot of operators, a lot of large, small, multifamily operators. What are you seeing something, not related to your core consulting business, but are you seeing some interesting cracks, or are you seeing the banks? Are you seeing any problems with some of the operators that you're talking to? For example, are they coming to you and saying, "Hey, I need to do a refi, and my NOI is not where I need to be. What can you do to help me increase my NOI because I'm not going to cut it," and so on and so forth?
Yeah, we see that a lot. Owners initially were very skeptical and very hesitant to do agreements because they thought, well, okay, now I'm going to have an encumbrance or a color on my title, and I don't want to have an easement. And now that's going to prevent me from selling my property, because a lot of these agreements, especially, there are several providers who insist that the easement get recorded with the Register of Deeds office, because that way it's publicly out there and a seller can't hide the fact that an agreement exists. So that's very common, and owners shouldn't be skittish over that. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of that because owners want to make sure that they can maximize their property's income value as much as possible, especially if they're going to hold that property for 5 years, which is, your typical holder. That's what I'm seeing anyway. Having an agreement in place actually can be valuable for the property, and not even just from a pure compensation standpoint. What people have to understand is they initially get really scared of having a contract because they think it's going to lock them up or tie them up. But in reality, having the agreement clearly dictates how the operator can behave on the property. If you don't have a right of entry agreement with the provider, sometimes they just feel like they can run amok and do whatever they want. Now, doesn't mean you're not going to have to make your children behave, at times, because they are misbehaving. The tech comes into the leasing office at the wrong time of the day, and they're not returning keys, and they're tracking in mud, and they're making a mess or running wires all over the outside of the building. But by having an agreement, it really puts them on notice and what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
So, and one thing that owners need to be mindful of too is they think that the bank will not allow an easement to be recorded because it's written into their loan.
Yeah.
That's rarely true. You know, it has happened and it does come up, but what a lot of providers will do is instead of giving you an easement, they'll give you a license, or they'll do what's called a memorandum of agreement. And you can use those instruments as well. And it really is doing the same thing, but it's swapping out the word easement for license. And then the bank is okay with it. And the last thing I'll say about this too is we've negotiated deals with the providers where we put language in the agreement that says, you know, kind of paraphrase here, but you know, if the property is going to be sold and be turned into a Walmart, or you know, non-multifamily, or if the existence of an agreement impacts the sale of my property, then the agreement can be voided, you know, or something like that. So there's creative ways to do it.
Sure.
I think at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning of the show, is don't just take whatever happens and think that's what you have to live with. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, there's a creative way to do it. And I've negotiated thousands of contracts in my career, literally thousands of them. And I can count on one hand how many deals we could never get done because both parties couldn't agree.
Very nice. Very nice. Oh, this is amazing. And when Haley and I do our next apartment syndication together, we're going to look for those contracts in the
yes. Do your due diligence. Yeah.
Todd, where can people find you? And you know, I know you're in South Carolina physically, but I'm sure you service the whole country, right?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
And where can they find you and so on?
So they can usually find me on social media. I'm pretty active. I post pretty much every single day. My contact information is on my profile, and you can learn a lot about me there. But yeah, my email address is tthorpe@mduconsultinggroup.com, and they can go to our website, which is mduconsultinggroup.com.
Yep.
And that's where we hang out.
Very nice. Haley, any last minute questions or comments?
I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah, no.
Very informative.
Yeah, very informative. You know, just something. You know, you learn something new every day, right? So, so very, very interesting, and I'm sure they're keeping you very busy. But look, you know, we'd love to catch up with you in maybe 6 or so months and see where you're at. But we'll definitely refer some business over to you, and Haley and I are working on our first deal together on an apartment. So hopefully we'll run some ideas by you as well. So
yeah, we're here to help.
Thank you. Thank you. Haley, thank you for your time. And yeah, thank you to our viewers and listeners. We'll post this on YouTube and you can catch us there, but have a great afternoon, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.